Hello everyone, this is Tyrell Cannon, back here again with another original art walkthrough. Today I'm going to take you through Astrobiology, Issue 1. This is a comic written by Seth Jacob, which I did the line art for. It is 36 pages of sci-fi adventure. I highly recommend you check out the book. It is available now via Seth Jacob. I'll have some copies available as well, signed from my website. And all of the pages you see here will be available for sale. If you are interested, you can visit tyrellcannon.com and get in touch to buy a page. First, I want to say thanks to everyone who backed the project on Kickstarter. It's because of backers that are willing to get in on the ground floor on projects like this and show their support that they're able to come to life. Astrobiology was actually done in kind of two sections. The first section, these first 7 pages in the cover, were done as sort of proof of concept, samples for the Kickstarter. They were done, probably almost 5 or 6 months ahead of time. So you will see a slight shift in the art style. Still happy with these pages though. Here's the cover. We have our 2 protagonists. We got Sophia and Leo. The idea here was to show the difference between the two. Sophia is obviously kind of more of a military type person, and Leo is a scientist who's amazed and very intrigued by everything alien that he encounters. I had a lot of fun drawing these muzzle flashes on the guns and trying to figure out how to make the recoil action and the slide action kind of come to life. I always like throwing bullet shells into these things. And then I really wanted this brightness coming across Leo from the alien that he's looking on. I did a mock-up of some letters, but we ended up having the logo done separately. This is page 1. Page 1 shows us Leo on his adventure. We see him on a watery planet with this crazy shark creature getting him. As he comes out of the water, you can kind of see that he is sort of invisible, and he starts to materialize as the scene goes on. One of the big things that Seth wrote into the script was to have, kind of special powers or abilities, technology-based, that Leo and Sophia both used. So here you see Leo has this invisibility cloaking and also these rocket shoes, which are really fun to draw. I'm really happy with how the water turned out on this page. The shark was really fun to draw too. I think Seth just wrote it as a flying shark. Like it came out of the water and like a flying fish, but it was a shark. I looked at a lot of Wayne Barlow when I was doing some of these alien designs. Page 2, we see that Leo's actually giving a lecture. He's a professor, much like Indiana Jones, but in the future. And he has kind of a hologram of his adventure here that he's been talking about. The letters were done separately on this one. Some of my comics I have the lettering done on the page, but this one they were done separately. Drawing a classroom, not the most fun thing in the world. I tried to have fun with it and put all these different kinds of characters in here. He wanted it to be a university that seemed like it served all these different kinds of future, whether they be aliens or transhumans, whatever kind of people there was in there. For the chalkboard, he has a drawing of the shark up there. I actually used a charcoal pencil to do that, to kind of give it that chalky look. I kind of needed to accentuate it a little bit in post in Photoshop to kind of get it to show, but I really wanted it to feel more like chalk instead of like an ink line on the page. Seth is really great about giving you tons of things to pull from when he writes each script page. And then sometimes he does specify a few things he wants. On this page, there is Sagan University, is his little homage to Carl Sagan, is the college that Leo works at. And then this is our first shot of Leo's flying car, which we'll get familiar with here. So this is a futuristic Chicago up here. Seth, again, gave me so many kinds of ideas of what to do here. It needed to be recognizable as a cityscape with things like flying cars and maybe some things that made you think of Chicago. Being someone who's from Chicago, this whole book was drawn in Chicago. This was pretty fun for me. I got to do things like I put a little L train in here. I also put in some of the iconic buildings that you see around Chicago. Let me actually see if I can give you guys a little bit better look at those. So you can see the different things in there. I also threw a little Mobius reference in here. We got Arzak flying across there. You have to do that. So the way I looked at this, it was by a lake that is also built into, the city is built into the rocks surrounding the area. Because this is New Chicago, which is on a different planet than the original Chicago is. So not on Earth, I guess. So you see him coming in here, landing, going into Pursue Labs. I also hit a little reference to Victus, one of my other comics, in right here. And there's a conversational scene. These are sometimes tricky to do. What I tried to do whenever I have these scenes is have a, some close-ups, things like fingers pushing buttons or close-ups on faces. And then also have some shots where you show a little bit of the background, and then you can get away with the heavier scenes with more dialogue, not having so much background in there. I think it worked pretty well. This is when Zofia shows up for the first time. So Leo's boss at this firm he works at that explores the galaxy and pays him to go on these trips feels, because of the shark incident, maybe he needs some help. So they hire Zofia, who's ex-military, and Seth wrote her as having 4 arms, 2 extra robotic arms, and wanted her to feel young but war-torn. Whereas Leo looks kind of young, but he's actually 100 years old. One of the looks we were trying to go for with him was like trying to make him feel like young, because in the future he has the ability to maintain his youth, but he also has some age on him. My 2 touch points, I think, were David Bowie and Lance Henriksen when I was drawing them. Those are the main things I was going for. And then they embark in Leo's car, which is also, a space-worthy vehicle. This was a tricky shot because I've gotten these a few times from different writers where they say, we want to see the characters in the window of the car as the car leaves, and you see the city or whatever it is or something in the background. Those are always really tricky. I think I got it here. The city's very small back there. But really the thing that intrigued me about doing this scene was showing all the sort of effects of atmosphere or energy kind of bouncing across the car as it left the atmosphere. Here we have a big gate that they go through, which is kind of like a wormhole gate. So that was kind of fun to visualize. I tried to build in these like kind of statuesque figures that Seth was referencing in the script. Also, one of the things Seth wrote that was really fun to figure out was this way the car moves through space. It sort of bends, warps gravity and space-time. And so the way I looked at that was to kind of show some kind of grid action to kind of get that across. So that's what you see there. With the spaceships, there's always a lot of fun things you can do designing spaceships. These are obviously really small, but I tried to make them all different. I did hide a reference to my friend Dan's comic. Space Mullet here is the ship from Space Mullet there. I'm not sure if anybody picked up on that yet, but there it is. And then this scene was also a lot of fun. Seth wrote the wormhole as sort of being like blood vessels or synapses in the brain. And so we really wanted to show the car making these kind of turns and then getting into this really crazy cosmic web of like a terminal that it's going through. Daniel, our colorist, really nailed this scene. I really love what he did there. As they come down, Leo gets spooked by sort of a appearance of the shark. So there's the first 7 pages. After this, we get into stuff that was drawn a little bit later. So page 8 is the first page I drew after the Kickstarter was funded. So we're looking at maybe 5 or 6 months later. It was a lot of fun to get back to the characters after a short break. I feel like I was actually able to give them a little bit of a fresh look. They stayed basically the same. I probably changed Zofia's hair a tiny bit. I wanted to make it a little bit more spiky. This was really fun. The ship, the ship/car lands here. I was happy to have these creatures break the panel. This was another example of in the script, Seth kind of just throws out hundreds of ideas, which is a lot of fun. And he's very collaborative, which is always a blast to work with a writer who wants you to put your own touches on things. So I don't think he described any of these animals specifically, but he did say he wanted different kinds of space creatures around. And so I made an effort to kind of just throw out some kind of different things. So we have some creatures retreating into the background, some birds breaking the panel there. We have a creature drinking some water from the river. So there's that. And then down here, Leo puts on his little goggles, which sort of magnet to the side of his head, and you get this goggle vision at the bottom, which, again, our colorist Daniel did some really cool things with color holds here on the final page. It was a thing where when I drew it, I actually intended it to be color holds, so that was kind of nice that I could communicate that to him, and then he was able to to kind of transform the line art into colored lines, which I think was a neat effect. They start to explore, and this is an example of some paneling ideas that actually came from the script. Seth had the idea of having these panel borders be broken by the trees, and so the trees sort of create the panel borders. I thought that was really cool, and I tried to push that. It kind of creates a lot of depth, I hope. And you see them both coming through here. Another thing I was trying to get across here is right away the difference between them. Sophia's using her swords to kind of hack through the jungle, just kind of get out of my way with everything, whereas Leo is much more calm, and when he does interact, it's to collect samples. So that was kind of fun to already start to show the difference between them. Another reason for the panel breaks was that the characters start off as being very separate entities that don't quite get along with each other. And then this is an example of where I did shift a little bit of what was in the script. I think that the scene where she spins and fires at something off panel was written where you could see everything in one panel, but I kind of divided that up into another shot up here. So they're being spied on by these drones from an evil corporation. I'm pretty happy with some of the effects here. A big thing I tried to push myself on with this book was to show different kinds of effects, whether it be gunfire, laser shots, explosions, smoke, also mist. There's this mist that comes in. It starts to come in on this page, and they're starting to get these hallucinations from the mist. So it was really a challenge to try to figure out how to render all these different things in a way that was clear but interesting, and giving each effect its own sort of look. Also, another challenge when you get into some of these more dense pages, not only did Seth have a lot going on in every panel, which again is fun but also a huge challenge for the artist, but this is taking place in a forest, and so you have to pick your battles on where you're going to show the background, and also when you're going to do details on the background. So here I went with sort of a silhouette with the trees, thinking the foreground kind of has some light in it. We can maybe not see as much detail in the back. Whereas here I wanted to show the environment again, like, okay, they're back into the jungle, there's a mist coming around them, so I'm showing more of the bark and those kind of things. Oh, side note too, on the bark on these trees, Seth had described it as sort of like a lizard skin bark on these trees. I thought that was a pretty cool idea. So as they get enveloped by the mist, they start having these hallucinations / flashbacks. You'll have to read the book to get the full details on kind of what's going on, but Sophia encounters this owl creature. I wasn't sure on this one. Seth wrote it as sort of an owl humanoid, is what he described it as in the script. And at first I drew it and I was like, is that too like cartoony? I often struggle with like this concept of realism versus sort of exaggeration. But when Seth saw it, he's like, oh, that's perfect. And I'm glad he said that, because I do think they're really adorable, these like owl creatures. It's revealed as she jumps through this mist towards herself, because she's seeing herself here, that it is an illusion, and she rolls down the hill and then lands in front of this giant boar, like a wild boar. I'm really happy with this 3-panel sequence down here. I like the speed here, and the rolling down the hill here, and then the way she kind of pauses here and has already got her hand on her sword, her training kicking in to get her ready for action. And Sophia only knows how to deal with problems one way at this point, and that's with violence. So she immediately strikes at the boar. The boar charges her, and she gives him a good slash, eviscerating this poor boar, who turns out was just protecting her little piglets. One thing I tried here too, on this page was, I wanted to show speed and action. I broke the panel border here, which was, something that I think, you have to be careful when you do it. But I really wanted to kind of create a little more depth than I had originally in the panel. And then I also tried this here where the blood from the boar is actually creating the panel on this bottom one. I like stuff like this. I wish more comics would do that. It's a thing you see a lot in sort of self-published comics, but not as much in mainstream books. Not to generalize, but I just did. They continue on, and we see a ancient structure, has some hieroglyphs, or I guess you'd call them, they're kind of carvings into it. It was tricky because there is, in the script, described all these big scenes with like a whole history of the creature that they're looking for. And it's got kind of tentacles and things, as you see up here. And it's really challenging to do this kind of stuff because, you want it to sort of read as having a story, but that this much detail is sometimes not going to be caught on the first viewing. I go ahead and try to add it in there a lot of the time because I feel like if you can reread a book and catch more every time, then that's a good thing. So there is a story here which Seth had in the script about this creature and how it interacted with maybe an ancient civilization that lived here. And then they continue on and we see more mist. I did want to point out too, I'm really happy with that panel. I like the owl with his blood coming out of his head there. So. All right, as they continue on, we see them going through the mist, and Seth had written that the mist and the apparitions start to intensify around them. So I started to abstract them, and I wanted all these kind of wispy smoke lines kind of rolling over the characters, kind of like you see in anime films. You know, like Spriggan, you know, there's like, when the little kid is psychically attacking, we see like, you know, tendrils of smoke sort of coming across the characters, and I really wanted to kind of show that going on there. Pretty happy with that panel. And then down here, as they go through the smoke, they end up grasping hands, which then, of course, we have a little moment here. We're like, oh wait, what are we doing here? You're getting a sense that they are starting to rely on each other more. It's a thing that's in the script, and it is in the dialogue, but it was important to, I think, show it with body language as much as possible. I hope that I got that across, you know, with or without the words. They arrive at the cave that they're looking for, and they run into kind of the bad guy, this Midas-looking metal man who's gold, and he works for the evil corporation that's trying to beat them to this discovery. This guy was a lot of fun to draw. He's kind of like a Silver Surfer Destro mix, and he has all these little drones around him. Again, to create some depth, I tried to break some panel borders with the drones. Seth wrote a neat little non sequitur here where you start to see some tendrils popping up. And they have a confrontation with him. Leo's ready to back down, but Sophia, not so much ready to back down. This is the first time we get to see her sort of in her full-on action. I wanted it to feel really kinetic. I wanted it to sense that there's a lot going on. So you see her using her swords with her arms, firing her sidearm with her robot arm, and her other robot arm making a shield, which she can use. Which I think, you know, hopefully that all comes across as a neat sort of visual thing. So there's a missing page here. Page 16 was one of the ones that was sold during the Kickstarter campaign. You can check that one out if you pick up the full book. You can see the next part of the action scene, which I think is pretty cool. What ends up happening is that Zofia gets trapped inside a cave because this creature's tendrils, you know, attack the drones, but also knock the cave walls down, and then she's stuck in here. And she thinks she's got a piece of it, but it turns out to be another apparition. I think a big theme throughout the book that Seth had going was this idea of reality versus fantasy or memory or illusion. And so you get a lot of that here. This is another page I'm pretty happy with the way I use some of the lights and darks and the water. I mean, obviously there's a million things I probably could have done better, but you know, I like the way that the rocks are hitting the water here. I'm happy with the drips around here and the way I got the water going. I'm always trying to loosen up. It still feels a little stiff at times, but that's, you know, that's what you do. You do better every day if you can. And then here we see that Leo did make it in the cave with her. He was cloaked, and you see him uncloaking here. I thought of his uncloaking being sort of like a liquid process as well, sort of like layers of liquid that obscure him kind of rolling on and off of him as it turns on and off. And they have a bit of an argument, and then I was able to play with some lighting down here at the bottom. I think that's a good spot to stop for this part 1. I will continue going through the pages with part 2. Again, check out Astrobiology. You can get it from Seth Jacob. I will have some copies on my website as well, and it is available digital and on paper. You can check out all the original art on tyrellcannon.com. You just go to the original art section. Thanks for watching.